And John. Good morning, gentlemen. Well, good morning and welcome, gentlemen. 10 minutes, 2 minutes to go. I'll let you know. If you want us to ask you some questions, please give us some time, and the floor is yours.
We do have a presentation to share with Council which supports the written submission that we actually made.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to introduce John Matheson, the company's Chief Financial Officer, and hopefully you're all aware, my name's Garth Cowie and I'm the CEO. Quite clearly, the Port of Napier supports the Council's investment in the water storage scheme, and it does so for a number of key reasons. One, firstly, it's a rare and unique opportunity to drive economic growth within the Hawke's Bay region. Second, obviously, is that the volume of cargo that's being generated from the land ultimately will go through the Port of Napier in some form or other, and that in itself helps add and retain Napier, the Port of Napier, as an export gateway in the future. And by default, it also then adds value to the port and hence to HBRIC and ultimately back to the council. I think one of the most not shocking numbers, and these two slides that will come now highlight that in actual fact Hawke's Bay is the second lowest economic growth area in New Zealand. We only eclipse Northland. And those numbers set out that quite succinctly. I think in a practical sense, the GDP per capita, we currently sit at 12th out of 15 regions. We're only just above half what the best area in New Zealand is, and at the current time we're way below the national average. And the question is, how are we, and it's a collective we, going to address that position? And if you look at the actual population bases around as well, then in actual fact you'd expect the GDP per capita to be higher here, given the range of industries that we have. So that reflects the extent and the challenge for the Regional Council as we move forward. And obviously there's a strong correlation between GDP per capita and health and social outcomes. But in saying that, I think the investment in the water storage scheme is one of a number of things that this council can make a difference on today. Not in the future, but today. It's not a silver bullet to all the problems that the council or the region has, but it is one of a number of steps that businesses and governance bodies can make in moving forward. The port's grown over the last 5 to 7 years, predominantly from outer region cargo, and I've explained that previously to this council. But that can't keep going on. We need the region to start growing itself. And if you only look at what's happened in the Canterbury region where there's outside investment, it has had a huge impact on the economic growth within the Canterbury region. And your investment today, or a decision to invest today, will have the same impact in the future for this region. Very quickly, yes, and I'll be open, we have a vested interest. We are a beneficiary, quite clearly, if the scheme goes ahead, because the economic activity that's generated will end up in cargo going across our wharf. The value-added production from the land ultimately will have an export orientation, whether it's horticulture, dairy, or more intensive sheep and beef, or even cropping. So in terms of the relevance, you only have to look at some other regions, though, that have not been able to maintain relevance in the international environment for shipping. And we look at Timaru, we look at New Plymouth, and we look at Centreport. So it's not scaremongering. If we do not maintain a relevance to international shipping in the future, we lose, and the region will lose, a significant portion of its livelihood. So in some ways, and in conclusion, and I know I've only got 10 minutes, there is a huge impact, though, from the multiplier effect from your investment. And in a pure sense, it's a double whammy for the council itself, or HBRIC, because you get a return off the actual investment in the water storage scheme, and you get now, as default or flow on, a multiplier effect by an investment or higher profitability from the port. And you only have to look this year at the small increase in volumes that have a material impact on the infrastructural nature of our business. So in that sense, I think those multiplier effects need to be taken into account when you come to make a decision today. Obviously, improved social and health outcomes are generally driven by population base. You need employment opportunities to drive that, and that's across health and education in many areas. Obviously, I've talked about the relevance of the port, and obviously the investment, HBRIC's investment in us. It's the single largest, most probably, step change decision that this region will see since the decision to start the Breakwater Port in the early 1900s. That's the magnitude of the scale, the decision-making responsibility that you have today. And it shouldn't be taken lightly, and I'm not suggesting you are taking it lightly. But there's a number of things, and I've picked up through various things. I read a recent article in a management magazine on procrastination, and it's defined as the art of waiting for a perfect decision. There is no perfect decision making. And if you waited for every bit of information, we would not have a decision in 10 years' time. So you need to look into your hearts and then decide at what point you do have that information to make a decision. But in my view, and it is respected my view, there is enough detailed information there now for this council to make a decision. And often too much information then creates more confusion. It will be a positive legacy for future generations, just as the port decision was many, many years ago. And your decision needs to be yes. I was going to do it as Sir Winston. I was going to have the cards yes or no, but I thought that might be a little flippant, Mr. Chairman. But it is a challenge for this council, and you need to be bold and courageous. It's $80 million of investment money, and that's not to be taken lightly. So happy to answer questions, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Belford and then Councillor Graham.
I have two questions. Despite your urging us to think grandly, I assume that if the conditions precedent are not met, you would not advise us to proceed nevertheless toward this grand vision.
I think our presentation said that obviously subject to financial hurdles being achieved, and same with the environmental ones. It's obviously subject to both being met. But I also, in our decision making with the port, and I'll just refer to that, quite often we can take a margin or a profit in different component parts of the business. And you need to decide where you may want to take that. You may want to take it in the dam and the return on the dam. You could. And you could also take it in the port. Or you, because of competitive issues, you may decide to only take it in the port. You can do a lot of things through the whole supply chain. So you have to be very careful to say, I've got to get an 8% or a 6% return on my money in the investment in the dam.
if I can
and
interrupt
when
you,
the whole process may fail.
You're not answering my question. If a condition precedent is 40% uptake of the water, and the people close to the ground in Central Hawke's Bay are deciding not to take up the water, surely you would not advise us to proceed with the project, right? Yes or no?
I'm not saying that. I say my view is that if it's 38%, not 40%, that 2% may actually have a negative impact on the financial return, but the other benefits will outweigh that negative, and that needs to be taken into account. So looking at the dam in isolation should be treated very, very carefully, because there's much wider benefits that need to be followed through.
Thank you. We could talk here all day, I suspect, but maybe another time. But thank you very much, gentlemen. Very good submission. And
Mr. Chairman, is it possible to get a copy of the slides?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
and I've got
we have
copies
those with
for
us.
these are the slides. Oh, that's great.
copies of
Thank
the
you.
slides here for
That's very
as
helpful.
well.
Thank you. Okay.